This is part 2 of our Worst Jobs in History series. In part 1, we covered 5 brutal work lives: the Roman galley rower, the coal miner, the plague body collector, the World War I trench runner, and the pyramid hauler. Now we're going even darker. Not just dangerous jobs, but labor systems built on forced work, where adults couldn't quit, couldn't rest, and were treated as replaceable. First, enslaved plantation field labor in the United States. This wasn't a job you could leave. It was forced labor controlled by violence and surveillance. Days began before sunrise and stretched into night, with relentless, repetitive work: cutting, picking, carrying, repairing, and moving at a pace set by someone else. The danger wasn't only heat and injury, it was the system itself: deprivation, punishment, and the constant reality that your exhaustion didn't matter. People endured by building community, sharing food, protecting each other in small ways, holding on to faith, and using songs and stories as a quiet form of survival. The brutal fact: enormous wealth and entire industries grew from stolen labor, while the people doing the work were denied freedom and treated as replaceable property. Second, enslaved labor on Caribbean sugar plantations. Sugar looked like luxury at a table, but producing it was a machine that never truly slept. The routine was punishing: cutting cane under brutal sun, hauling heavy bundles, then rushing to process it before it spoiled, inside boiling houses filled with heat, smoke, and scalding danger. Injuries were constant: blades sliced skin, bodies collapsed from exhaustion, and burns could happen in seconds around hot vats and open fires. The pressure of quotas made it worse because the work didn't slow down when people did. Adults survived by clinging to each other, sharing knowledge, guarding moments of rest, keeping culture alive in fragments, and resisting in whatever ways were possible. The brutal fact: sugar's sweetness was powered by a system that treated adult lives as disposable fuel for export profits. Third, forced rubber collection in the Congo Free State era. This wasn't work in the normal sense. It was a quota system enforced through fear, driving adults deep into forests to extract latex from vines and return with a required amount no matter the cost. The routine was long treks, hunger, dangerous terrain, and hours scraping sticky rubber that bonded to skin and hair while time ran out. The dangers weren't only disease and exhaustion, it was the quota itself, because failure wasn't a smaller paycheck, it was punishment, and meeting it meant destroying your body to do it again tomorrow. People coped through quiet resistance, hiding, fleeing when possible, and relying on community networks to survive. The brutal fact: rubber that fed global industry was extracted through coercion so extreme it devastated entire regions and shattered countless lives. Fourth, enslaved adult miners in the ancient world, like the silver mines of Laurion. Underground mining wasn't heroic, it was a disappearing act. Adults were forced into narrow tunnels with weak light, terrible air, and constant collapse risk. The routine was digging, hauling, and breathing dust until breathing became the problem. Poisonous air pockets could drop you without warning, and the mine didn't care how tired you were, only whether the ore came out. Survival meant learning the tunnel by sound and touch, working in rhythm, and shrinking life down to the next basket, the next step, the next breath. The brutal fact: the silver that financed fleets, monuments, and golden ages came from adults treated like tools that wore out underground. Finally, convict leasing and forced prison labor in the United States after the Civil War. On paper, it was punishment. In practice, it became a pipeline of coerced adult labor rented to private companies, mines, railroads, and plantations where profit mattered more than survival. The routine was long days of backbreaking work under armed oversight, minimal food, brutal living conditions, and medical neglect. The danger was constant injury and disease, but also the incentive structure. When labor is cheap and replaceable, the system has no reason to protect it. People endured by forming alliances, sharing information, conserving energy, and holding on to the hope of release in a system that often tried to trap them longer. The brutal fact, it recreated slavery's economics under a new name, turning adult bodies into revenue again. The common thread is the most disturbing part. These weren't accidents or rare tragedies. They were systems designed to extract maximum labor at minimum cost, with human life treated like fuel. And once you see that pattern, history looks different. Because behind every luxury, every monument, and every industrial boom, there's usually a workforce that paid in years of health, freedom, and dignity. If you want part 3, I'll cover 5 more forced labor systems, different places, different eras, same brutal logic.